Brad today. Brad is the senior national advisor for the Federation's security arm, which is called Secure Community Network. It's the Jewish Federations of North America. And today, what he's going to talk about is how or what the security of our Jewish community looks like nationally, and as well how locally we can build a resilient community with everything going on today. And I think that it's important to really highlight one of Brad's, I guess, early in his work for the Jewish community was really with the Pittsburgh Federation. He was their director of security, and of course, the largest or greatest known tragedy in the modern synagogue shootings, for sure in the United States, church shootings as well, is the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and Brad was very involved then. So it's an honor to have you here today with us, and we appreciate your time. And I'm gonna share the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good chatting with you as we got on earlier. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully nothing weird pops up. I also have my colleague, Jimmy. Jimmy, are you on the call, sir?
Yeah, he is on. I saw him pop up.
So what I thought I would do today is just kind of go nationally, what we're looking at for the Jewish community. Folks, I joined the Jewish Federation in January 3rd, 2017. I actually retired from the federal government after 32 years, 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, and then 28 plus in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Retired January 1st, and then took a position as Pittsburgh's first Jewish communal security director. And at the time, you know, we have 146 federations across North America. I was the 19th security director for our community. And really what we're talking about, and I'm going to talk about nationally, a little bit about Pittsburgh, and then ask Jim to come on to talk about the programs and the projects that are going on in the Phoenix area. Because I think it is important that everybody knows that Phoenix, Scottsdale area has a security director, a highly qualified individual who I'm going to introduce here in a little bit. And our job really is to facilitate security needs to all our organizations. And I used to bill myself in Pittsburgh as the FBI agent for the Jewish community. We had a little over 50,000 folks who identified as Jewish in Pittsburgh. Probably at least 60, 65 separate facilities, buildings that housed a little over 80 organizations in Pittsburgh. So we had a pretty big, sizable community in Pittsburgh, and vast majority of that community was right in a section of Pittsburgh called Squirrel Hill, at least about 50%. And then the other 50% was scattered out into the suburbs. And really, we developed a program no different than Jimmy's in Phoenix and a lot of our partners. And I said I was the 19th security director, and now we have over 50 security directors throughout the United States. So we are growing leaps and bounds. And I come from the Secure Community Network, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But why do we talk about this today? I would tell you, when I was in the FBI, I spent most of my time as a violent crimes agent or supervisor. I worked gangs, guns, drugs, all the violent crimes for the first half of my career. In the second half of my career, I worked public corruption and civil rights. And in civil rights, housed hate crimes. And I used to work as an FBI agent with the Jewish community. I used to beg the Jewish community when I was in the FBI, report every single thing, report every sign of hate and anti-Semitism. And one thing we are not good at, we're getting a lot better in the Jewish community, a lot better, is reporting every sign of hate. Now, I will tell you, following these statistics on what's going on to our community, look, this is not to scare you. This is just to give you kind of some facts and figures on why these security programs are so important. The increase in anti-Semitism really steadily really started increasing since 2008. And then in 2016, November, December, we had a turnover, with the president, and then it just, that steady increase then skyrocketed. So, and it continues to move on that upward trajectory. And when we all went to ground in mid-November or mid-March, beginning of April, when we shuttered our facilities because of COVID, that anti-Semitism did not go away. It just morphed over the internet, morphed over social media. So now we see this proliferation nationally of all these hate groups that have just skyrocketed. So we see that as it goes through. Now, SCN is the official safety and security committee. We're under the auspices of the Jewish Federation of North America and the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish Organizations. And we really support any Jewish community across the United States. I spend a lot of time in communities that do not have security directors. I do a lot of training. I think training is really important for our community, because I think we need to really give our community the ability to own its own security. And what I mean by that is we encourage all our organizations to develop safety committees within every one of our shuls, with any one of our communal security organizations, because as good as law enforcement is, and Jimmy comes from law enforcement, I come from law enforcement, as good as that response is, we're an affected community. We are a targeted community. We need to have a conscious culture of security. We need to own our own security in our Jewish organizations. That does not diminish a police response, but we need to be great partners with law enforcement. And so everything that I did when I came to Pittsburgh to develop the communal security program, because we had SCN at the time, but we only had a few folks. We are now hiring security directors that work under the Secure Community Network model. And we're all retired law enforcement from somewhere. We have a lot of FBI agents. We have Secret Service agents. We have retired law enforcement executives like Jimmy is. We have folks that have, a vast amount of experience. And so collectively, we come together all the time and try to develop best practices. And so really, that's what we're trying to do at a national level. So for example, we have active threat training, which we think it's important for everybody to go through. And to be quite honest with you folks, I can't guarantee you a lot. I can't guarantee the safety of everybody, but what I can tell you, the only thing we truly have under our control of thwarting any one of these attacks or raising that awareness is how much we prepare. And preparedness is so important. And so what happened in Pittsburgh was horrific. I spent a lot of my years as a crisis manager in the FBI as well. So I would go to active shooter after mass casualty event. I would do that nationally also. I would respond on a national level to these major incidents throughout our country, to start with the first World Trade Center, then 9/11. That's what I did for years and years. And the Jewish community alone is so important for us to understand that we are targeted so we could prepare our community. So it wasn't until probably 2014, I mean, this is just a few years ago, that collectively our nation said that we need to do a better job at educating our community on what to do in case they're attacked, in case they go through an active shooter. So that's really the first time in our nation's history that we started teaching how to survive an active shooter, right? Run, hide, fight, or all the different security protocols that we have in place. But we knew it was important to educate everybody across the board. So in the Jewish community, it's ever more so important because that anti-Semitism has risen. And now, unfortunately, over the last couple years, we have Pittsburgh, we have Poway, we have Jersey City, we have Muncie, we have other physical attacks that have killed people in our community. We've had physical attacks that have injured people in our community. So we need to take this seriously. So that's why we do a lot of this training as for the community. And so really what does SCAN look like? We partner with the FBI. We partner with Homeland Security. We develop different protocols just to protect every facet of our Jewish community, whether it's our synagogues, our JCCs, our senior or assisted living facilities, our Jewish family and community services, our schools. I spent most of my time as a Pittsburgh communal security director in schools because I think it's the most important thing to protect our kids. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. We do that in basically 3 methods. One, we go in and we do assessments of our facilities. What I mean by that, we go through our synagogues, we physically assess their security systems, security protocols, and we identify gaps and vulnerabilities, and then we work with the synagogue to fix those gaps and vulnerabilities. And then secondly, we work with our groups to develop training and drill programs to help our staff, our ushers and greeters, our organizational staff, and most importantly, every congregant that attends services at that shul, some type of training, some type of situational awareness training, some type of active shooter training, just to put it in everybody's brains, because we don't want people to freeze when something bad happens. And if you'll bear with me, I want to play a video, if that's okay, of a survivor of Tree of Life at the end of this to demonstrate to you why it's so important that you take advantage of services that Jimmy offers in Phoenix or nationally services that we offer. Really important. And so our security directors, Jimmy spends a lot of his time coordinating efforts with law enforcement. He came from law enforcement, so he's your go-to person in the community that's really supporting that. And so that's really what we look to do. We look to assess, improve, and deploy our resources through the community. And I'm happy to share this information with you all, and I'm happy to email this to you. But these are just some of the priorities that we really look through on securing that. And if I may, I'd like to take 5 minutes and ask Jimmy to come on to talk about his programs. And then I'd like to round it out with talking to you a little bit about Tree of Life if we have some time, and the key takeaways. Does that sound all right with everybody?
Yeah, it's perfect. And
Go ahead.
I want to plug Jimmy as well.
Yes, go ahead.
So just so everyone knows, the way I actually reached out to Brad was actually through a brother of mine who lives in Pittsburgh, or now moved to Phoenix, but had a very similar relationship that I have with Jimmy, in the sense that he was a director of security through the Federation locally, and Jimmy being the one out of Scottsdale's JCC's office. Tremendous resource for synagogues, schools. We've used and tapped into that resource and really creating this togetherness where you can assess and work together as a community. So I'm just giving that same plug that Brad just gave for Jimmy. And Jimmy, you're spotlighted. You're welcome for the floor.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Brad, very much. Just to kind of highlight in a couple of things that you have said is, I think when we work as a community with security, we are definitely stronger when we work together, we communicate together, and we share information. I just got this letter from a synagogue here in Phoenix. Brad, when you talk about not sending, throwing things away, hate mail and things like that, this is a perfect example of it. This was it wasn't a specific threat, but it was a pretty awful letter. So I sent this. I'm working closely with Scottsdale PD for analysis, and Brad, I sent it over to the duty desk. So it's important when we get information, anything like this, please send it somewhere, either to me or Brad, the duty desk. It's just important that we look at this because we can identify trends, which is what SCAN does. They can look at this from a national level and say, yeah, okay, we've seen this before, we've seen it over here, and put their input into it as well. So sharing this information is absolutely critical. Like you said, don't throw it out. The communication platform, again, we've got to just stay in touch with each other. And I have to say what Brad said. We did a lot of training before this COVID thing kicked in, and we haven't trained in a long time. And the situational awareness, even though we're not meeting in large groups, your situational awareness is always critical. And it's important that we keep our eye on the ball. And I talked to Duran about this last week, Brad, about reminding everybody we have to stay focused on security. If I was a bad guy, this would be a time where, people are kind of not really focused. They've got so many other things keeping businesses afloat, and that you really could kick somebody when they're down. So we're really trying here at the J to really keep the staff, everybody focused very, very intently on security. And just for all the work that we've done, we came so far that we don't want to lose any of that traction. Staying vigilant, like I said, and we were doing training. We were going to entire synagogues, and after the rabbi gave the sermon, we would actually take 15 minutes and practice very quick evacuation drills. And it sounds very simple, but I always say the first time you go through an emergency, the exit should not be an emergency. You should know what's on the other side of the door. You should know if something was to happen, and when you go through that, what are you going to do? You're going to make a right or a left. And to speak to Brad's point, you can't freeze, and seconds matter. Seconds moments are important, but seconds and fractions of seconds are critical in an act of violence. So, and Rabbi, I know you're very good about reaching out to me, and just please know I'm still here. We can do virtual training. SCAN is rolling out a new platform for Run, Hide, Fight. It's kind of the same. It's still the same, but it's a different spin on it. So we're always trying to look at a new way to present things. And I'll get that question a lot from people. Is this the same old training? And it kind of is, in the sense that the mother of all training is repetitions. The more you repeat and do it over and over and practice the same thing, the more it becomes just ingrained in your instincts. And when cops get into shootings, they say, "Oh, it was like my training." You want to respond and just have a very quick instinct to go to your training and do what's right and get yourself out of that situation. So again, I'll just plug that training. I think it's critical. And again, Rabbi, we're here, and if I'd like to keep that ball rolling. We had done so much work, and with the Stop the Bleed, the tourniquets, so that's
actually just to jump in, because so the group that's on today is actually none of the ones that did the training with us. So I know that would be a good idea as it is.
Okay.
But and something to sort of what Brad said, a lot of people think that the Run, Hide, Fight is for younger people. And I know Brad was saying how when I spoke to him on the phone, I know this is the clip that he's sharing today, is I think a 90-something-year-old person who took that training and it saved his life during that shooting. So that's why I thought today was so important in general, just to talk about it. And of course, there's a lot of questions that people are going to have for probably Brad and you as well. Yeah, sorry, continue. We'll definitely, I think it would be a good idea to do a training just for, like you said.
Just to keep that situational awareness, and just to kind of keep that motion that momentum that we had built up with training and awareness, just to keep our eye on that.
So Rabbi, if it's all right, I'm going to share the screen again. And then if we have some time, what I will do is I'm just going to pull up the new training protocol that we use, we call it almost like Run, Hide, Fight on steroids. And I want to just go to the section where Tree of Life is. Just bear with me 1 second here. And I'll just run through very quickly a little bit about Tree of Life and show a video. Rabbi, can you see my screen? Is it?
Yeah, and you probably, when you shared it, did you click the optimize for video?
Yes, yeah, that's all. That's clicked.
We all see it.
Yes, and the audio too as well. So folks, we do a lot of Tree of Life. In fact, prior to us all shuttering our buildings, Jimmy and I talked extensively, and we were coming down there in May to actually do a few Tree of Life presentations, along with some active shooter tabletops and drills and et cetera. Exactly what Jimmy was talking about. Look, we talk about this Tree of Life. It was the most horrific attack to our community and our nation's history. And unfortunately, in my law enforcement career and my post law enforcement career, is probably one of the absolute worst crime scenes that I've ever walked through and had to witness in our community, and especially for our community. But today I just want to spend 5 minutes and then play a video for you, and happy to answer any questions. What we talk about now is how horrific that event was, but why did people live? And that is really what we focus on now when we talk about Tree of Life, is why did a lot of people, and why did most of the people in that building that day, the vast majority of people in that building that day, survive that attack? Now, I want you to keep in mind that the attacker that showed up that day was armed with a AR-15, which is a military style grade weapon with hundreds of rounds, and also 3 semi-automatic pistols. He used all 4 weapons that he had. He had additional weapons with him. And in this case is still in the prosecution phase, so I can't answer any questions about his motives other than what you've all heard. But we're going to focus today on why people live. So to kind of give you a little backdrop, we did a lot of training prior to October 27th. That first year and a half that we had our program, we did a little over 135 training sessions for about 6,000 people in Western Pennsylvania, specifically for the Tree of Life. We did 2 separate active threat trainings, one in September of 2017 and one in September 5th of 2018. Very similar trainings where a lot of folks from the 3 congregations, Tree of Life, Dor Hadash, and New Light, came to learn about what you do in case you were attacked with an active shooter. And so on September 5th of 2018, we did the same thing 6 weeks prior to the Tree of Life attack. Excuse me, had the hard conversation with our rabbi of Tree of Life, who at the time was, or still is, it's a conservative shul. And, you know, we had that debate, that hard call. Well, I'm a conservative rabbi in a conservative shul. I would never carry my cell phone on Friday or Saturday during Shabbat. And I just can't, I couldn't, you know, I don't do that culturally. And so we had that hard conversation. You know, preservation of life trumps everything. And unfortunately, we had that conversation on September 5th, 2018. Rabbi, we don't have panic buttons. We don't have the sophisticated, all the bells and whistles in this particular shul. At that time, they were working very hard to increase their security posture and try to get new security enhancements in that building, but we weren't quite there yet. So fortunately for us, that rabbi changed his protocols. He was the first one to call 911. We also worked extensively with our first responders. We did full-scale exercises at our JCC with about 300 people, 150 community members who were role players, and 150 first responders from police, fire, and emergency medical technicians. And when Tree of Life happened that day, they actually had a trauma surgeon inside the building rendering life-saving first aid to our community members and police. So there was an 83-minute standoff once the police drove the bad guy up to the 3rd floor, where they continually had shootings between the bad guy and law enforcement. So what's important to know, the second that police arrived on scene, no other civilian was shot. 4 police officers were shot responding, but they contained it and were ultimately able to get and mitigate the threat with the bad guy after 83 minutes. So what I'd like to do, and I do so much training, just like Jimmy does, and we always get the question that, you know, I'm a little older, I have some mobility issues, what do I do? And so what the run, hide, fight model really teaches you is all about movement, getting out the evacuation or enhanced lockdown, that hide part. And I want to play a clip. It's about 6 minutes of an individual by the name of Joseph Charney. He's top left. And he was at the time of the shooting 90 years old and actually responded and reacted and ran. And so now when we do training, we use these survivor stories to demonstrate that this training really does work, and it gives you the good situational awareness that you need to make a decision. How fast or slow you are is irrelevant. It is all about movement and getting to safety. But I want to just introduce all these four folks that are up on the screen. To the right, top right is in glasses is an individual named Steve Weiss. He was the head of the Jewish religious studies. He had been through numerous trainings with us and was able to survive that attack, run from the Tree of Life Chapel, the smaller chapel where they were holding their services Saturday morning, to run across the Bema as the bad guy was shooting at him, downstairs to alert the other two congregations. And so many people got to safety because of Steve Weiss. Bottom left, Audrey Glickman, who was actually leading the services that morning before Rabbi Myers got up. And she was able to get people out of the front row and get them and help get them through safety. She's been through our run, hide, fight, and our Alice, our alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate. Two different types of training. And then the bottom right is Rabbi Myers. And I'm happy to stay on after we answer questions to play, the other videos as well. Rabbi Myers was the individual who really started getting his congregation and all the congregations that are housed in his building online to do the training. It was because of him coming in 2017 into the Tree of Life, really wanted to do the active shooter training just like all the other shuls. So he was responsible for that as well. So I'm going to play Joe Charney, and then I'll be back with you when he's done and to answer any questions you may have.
I came to Shul my usual time on Saturdays, a little around 9:45. That's when services started, and there were already some people there, and others were coming on. And Rabbi motioned to Audrey to start the service, which she did. That was her part in this. And I was sitting in my usual seat in the fourth row, and we heard the noise. We heard a noise. And I turned around, and I saw this man with a gun pointed at me. And I was not still for very long, less than a few seconds, I think. And at that point, I turned around, and Audrey and the rabbi were trying to help some of the people who were there to get out of the way, but that turned out to be not possible. And I don't remember my exact words, but basically I said, we were all pointing to upstairs, and I said, let's go. Things so that it could. And so Audrey went up, and I went up on the left side where there was a stairway all the way up to the third floor. And the rabbi went over to the center and went up also out of range, and pulled his cell phone out and called. Now, I wasn't sure who we called. I really didn't hear any shots. Now, that may be because of my hearing, but And so we decided, Audrey and I, that the logical thing was to go out around the inside of the building as far east as we could get, and then come down and go out the door. And we went out, and there was some police, women police, who were very helpful. Got us across the street, put us in the hands of the young man who took us down to one of the numerous cars that was parked, and we got in there, and nobody told us to be quiet or anything like that, but we really couldn't think of anything to say. We didn't really know what all this was about, except that there was shooting and that I had seen this guy, but
if you would have stayed in the chapel, what would have happened to you?
I would be dead.
So, folks, that's Joe Charney. That's one of the stories. And look, there's three actions if you get involved in one of these incidents: fight, flight, or freeze. And our community, we really need to teach our community and educate our community on not freezing. And that's the importance of partnering with Jimmy, working with the rabbi to continually do this training. It's for everybody, folks. It's not just for ushers and greeters. It's for our kids. Look, our kids now is early as elementary school are getting some type of training like this. And then in middle school, they actually call it active shooter training. And then in high school, and we need to put our community in the best light possible, because it's unfortunately, it's not a matter of if we are attacked again. It's only a matter of when and where. And this can happen anywhere. We know it. It's happened in every place in our community that we can think of. And I will tell you, we do after action reviews as many years that I've been in law enforcement. And there's a couple things that people always say, witnesses: I never thought it would happen here. I never thought it would happen here. I never thought it would happen here. You consistently hear that from people involved in one of these incidents. That's why it's so important. The only thing we can really do, and the only thing we have control over, is prepare. With that, Rabbi, I'm happy to answer any questions with my colleague, Jimmy, and I'll stay on as long as you guys like.
All right. Thank you again. I see already. Rena, you have a question?
Yes, I have a comment and a question. You mentioned that the three responses are fight, flight, or freeze. I am very interested in the fight component of that. I am one of these people that believes that the only way to stop a bad man with a gun is by a good man with a gun, and excuse the sexism in that, woman too. I have friends in congregations in New Jersey and Ohio that actually do have armed security on premises, as well as locked entry doors and other security measures. I actually stopped going to the JCC in Scottsdale a few years ago because I think their security is abominable, practically non-existent. I've seen people at the front desk busy without paying attention to what's going on around them. They appear to be unarmed. Even in the evening hours, I attended a meeting and the front desk clerk was flirting with a young lady with his back to the front door. I want security when I go to a Jewish facility. I expect it, I demand it, and I'm not seeing it.
Rena, when was the last time you were at the JCC?
Probably a year and a half ago.
I invite you to come back and talk to me and let me show you what we do have in place. And I would like to talk to you a little bit further about that. Okay. We've done a lot of things. We've, gone through the years here, made a lot of improvements. We're always looking to improve. We will never say we're perfect. We'll never say that we've got there. We're here. We're secure, like Brad said, but we always strive. The security is a destination. It's a trip. It's never a destination. We're always looking to improve. So if you would ever like to come by and talk personally, I would be absolutely open to talk to you and show you in person some of the things that we do have in place.
Jimmy, I would appreciate it. I appreciate the offer. I appreciate if you give your contact information to Rabbi so he can get it to me. I'm also concerned. I see children outside playing soccer. There's just so much that I don't see happening that concerns me, and I really would appreciate the opportunity to meet with you.
Please, yes, I'd love to. And hey, we're not above criticism if we make a mistake or we don't catch something. And you know what I always tell everybody here at the JCC, and we're all part of the security team. There's 3 guys here right now, but everybody that walks in this building should be part of our security. And if they see something, bring it to somebody's attention. We're all in this together. So I welcome you to come in and let's, spend 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I would love to talk to you.
Thank you.
Just a couple things, if you don't mind. I just wanted to comment about Brad's video very quickly. There's a couple of phrases in that video that always really stick with me. And when we train is, in crisis, people will either do one or two things. They will either lead or be led. And it was amazing to me when he says to the people, he says, let's go. And that's that mentality that somebody's actually standing up and saying and taking charge. And the other thing, when he says, he uses a phrase there, he says, I know we were out of range. To hear a man like that say out of range, we know what he's talking about. I think that's an incredibly powerful statement. And those statements always, no matter how many times I hear that video, when he says that phrase out of range, that means he's out of range of the shooter. And I know exactly what he's talking about. It's an incredible statement. And then lastly, he says he didn't hear the bullets under stress. We know there's a thing called auditory exclusion. Very common that you just won't hear or see everything that's going on around you. And the thing that helps with that is training.
And I just want to jump in to answer something that Rena mentioned. We comment about this a lot. We use the JCC for our lunches, as many of you know. And before Jimmy began working with the Federation and really updating and upgrading the security, I tell Jimmy all the time, it's a night and day difference from what it was to what it is now. So I'm not sure if Rena was there when you had just started and just began or not, but I know, it's a known thing. The JCC has changed their security tremendously in a positive way. So I just want to put that in there just in case others here have not been in the building to really experience it. There are a number of questions in the chat from most of them are from one individual, Stevie. If both of you or one of you want to look through that.
Yeah, I think I can answer. I'll answer it globally, and then and Jimmy, please take a crack at this. And a lot of it has to do with firearms in the congregation, arming congregants. Look, I have very strong opinions about this, and let me preface with the following. Security is just not having an armed guard standing in front of your shul prior to services. If that's all you have, security, that's a failure in security. Security is a layered approach. And when it comes to guns, we need to do everything before we put armed security in there. Having a good security posture, layers of security, teaching our ushers and greeters, looking to put in protocols, access control protocols, everything we do and everything that Jimmy works for in educating our community on how to secure our facilities. And I think Jimmy really put this well. Security is the responsibility of every single person. And so when I do active shooter training, I always say, is anybody in this room a first responder? And some people might say, well, I'm a medic or I'm a fireman. And the answer is everybody in that active shooter class is really a first responder, because we teach you how to survive for 3 to 5 minutes prior to law enforcement getting there. So what does that mean? We have to respond. That being said, guns in a congregation, guns that are an armed security in our facility, we need to carefully think that through. We need to carefully think through civilians carrying guns. We have that question so much. We have a national paper called Firearms and the Faithful. We're happy to share it with the rabbi to get it out to everybody. And it's the careful consideration before you strap a gun on your side and carry it in support of organizational security. Well, first, there's a lot of laws that prohibit that unless you're qualified and you're either off-duty police officer or armed security. There's insurance liabilities and everything else. But I want you to really think carefully about that. A good guy with a gun will defeat a bad guy with a gun every time. Yes, I've heard that saying. I've answered that question so many times. But if the guns are in the possession of people that are not highly trained, do not think about use of force, do not think about when they can pull that gun out, think about insurance liability to the organization. All these perils and pitfalls, that's what we need to decide before we put or let our congregants carry guns. Separately, it's a conversation that all our safety and security committees should have in every one of our facilities. Do we need an armed presence? Do we not need an armed presence? Yes, if you have the right armed presence, yes, it's a good part of an effective security layered approach, but it's not the only one. And then, Jimmy, do you want to add on to that at all, please, sir?
Yeah, you know, I was a SWAT guy for 30 years. The amount of training that goes into handling a firearm in a high stress situation, such as an active shooter, is beyond the pale of stress. It takes years and years and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of intense training to get to that level to manage deadly physical force in a situation like that. And just so everybody knows, I'm a gun guy. Hey, I'm a Second Amendment guy. I'll put that out there. I'm sure everybody figured that all out by now. I believe in that. But the training element, if you walk into a store, you know, just buy a firearm. I've seen many, many, many people lose their lives because they bought a firearm, put it on their belt, and thought they were going to protect themselves and weren't able to because they didn't train enough or properly. So the training is, I'm all for it as long as you are highly, highly trained and you belong to a security team, not a security club that gets together once in a while and you train and train and train. You know, that is the key. Most of the time I say, leave the firearms to professionals and or get to that level. It's a big, huge responsibility. So I agree with you.
May I respond, please? This is Rena.
Hi, Rena.
I don't disagree with you about civilians carrying firearms that are not trained. I want paid security. I want professional security when I go to facilities that are at risk. And some of them may be undercover. I may not be aware of them. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I've looked around to see if there's anybody paying attention to people. And I think at least I should be able to notice that. You know, I'm not suggesting parishioners, you know, the congregants carry guns willy-nilly by any means. But I'm not sure that Jewish Federation has made an adequate commitment budget-wise to this type of situation, and I want to see money go towards professional security.
So Rena, I'm going to jump in. We need to get Marty Haberer on here instead of Jimmy. He's the director of the Federation. But I will say, I think that just from a congregational standpoint, not to answer on the sense of the security sort of perspective, it's quite cost prohibitive to have an armed guard security officer at all times. And I know Jimmy can talk more about that just on the Federation's perspective, how much they're spending on security just for the JCC building. And that's really where people start, juggling the risks versus, and nobody wants to have that conversation, but you have to.
We're fortunate. We have a very good board that supports us on a lot of the security endeavors that we want to do. So we've been fortunate to have that kind of support from the board here at the JCC. Just to talk to Steve, yes, I do. Steve put in here about metal detectors. I think they're, as Brad would say, they're a great layer to security. But we like to make one thing that the CEO says here is he wants, when people walk through the door, he wants people to feel safe and he wants people to feel welcome. When I started here, I said I can secure the building tomorrow, but there'll be a line out to Scottsdale Road and no one will ever come back. So we have to balance the line between security and also making people feel welcome and comfortable when they walk into the building. So I do like the idea of metal detectors, maybe intermittently used or shared around the community, where they could be, maybe we could have one and Rabbi, you could use it one day and we could so you never really know where it's going to show up. It's a great deterrent. And I can tell you more stories about that, but I know we're really pushed for time.
Can I put two questions that were put on the chat that I think people might appreciate? Stevie had written about, how do you know what's on the other side of the door? And I know, Jimmy, you always talk about that. It's not just about synagogues and Jewish community centers, but even when you go to a restaurant, sort of knowing your exit routes. Maybe you want to address that. Is there, obviously when you do a training, you learn about that, but if you're going to a place where you don't have that.
And that comes back to practice, like at the synagogue, the fire drills are very simple, but boy, do they save a lot of time when you do a fire and evacuation drill. In your personal world, your personal safety and situational awareness, you go to a restaurant, you sit down, you should always look around, look if something happened. We call it the what. We talk about this in training. I know, Rabbi, you've heard this, that what ifs. And if you sit down in a restaurant, you say, look around and say, what if this happened? What if somebody walked in here with what if there was a shot fire? What if this happened? What would I do right now? If you do that when you're in a new environment, what Brad says, that helps you avoid that freeze reaction, which is critical. That what if training is just, what if if you're walking to your car and say, what if I was getting to my car and I saw somebody kept walking up, what would I do? And if you run these scenarios in your mind, not all day long, but a couple times a day, or if you're in a new area, it really does help you process something when if a situation occurs, because it's all about processing and being able to process the situation and respond appropriately and quickly to it.
And then the other question I thought would be a good one to address, it's an easy one, I think. You both had mentioned about reporting every single incident of anti-Semitism. So someone asked on the chat how to do that properly. And I assume that in addition to whatever you're going to share, you were saying that they should also share it with you guys in a sense.
Yeah, you can send it to me. You can send it to Brad on the SCAN Security Community Network's website, your local police department. But definitely the key is to make sure that we share it. It just doesn't get put away somewhere, and then that we as a community can respond to it. And because that's, if something happens, with you, Rabbi, it'll affect the entire community.
Okay, and then the other question I think is really for both of you. And I think Brad is going to say you contact the local person, but this is the question in chat. A family, let's say, lives in Prescott, which is a smaller Jewish community in a smaller sort of city of the state. Is there a training available for small communities?
Absolutely. I go up to Flagstaff. I've done training up in Flagstaff for the synagogue up there. Assessments, yeah, absolutely. I'd love a trip to Prescott. Yeah, that's not a problem. I'll go anywhere. So I've been all over the state, so of course I'll come up. And usually what I'll do is meet with the security who's ever coordinating it and make sure we customize it to your community. The basics are still the same, but we try to do a little pre-planning so it's not so generic, but yeah, that's not a problem. Anywhere in the state, anywhere, it's fine. It's a 2-hour drive for me.
So if I could sort of direct that one back to Brad, how does that work in other, we're very, I tell this to a lot of my colleagues, we're very fortunate to have Jimmy because he really does reach out to all these different communities. I mean, we connect him in Flagstaff. I know that the bot over there flies him in, you know, they have their, someone who goes to that community as a pilot says, okay, let's come for the day. But how does that work in other states, sort of on a national level? Is that the same? Is everyone fortunate to have a Jimmy?
Yeah. So not everybody has a Jimmy, but no. So unfortunately not. We're not quite there yet. So we got out of 146 federations across North America, we're probably filled about 55 federations right now. So what I encourage people to do if they don't know, one, they can reach out to us at securecommunitynetwork.org. They can request training. They can request resources, assessments, and then we'll filter it back up. Either we'll cover it or connect them with the right folks at that federation in their area. But no, and I do probably, I don't know, maybe 4 trainings a week with communities that do not have security directors. We figured out a way to do them over platforms like Zoom. We don't want to not do training. And to Jimmy's point, take advantage of it now too, because we can reach a lot of people over this platform as well. It's not as good. I'm not going to kid you. It's always better to have Jimmy stand in front of a group of people and then at the end kind of walk the facility or however that may look for that particular training. And I love exactly what Jimmy said. He's going to tailor it to that organization and get the best bang for our buck for that training. But we're happy to go anywhere in the country to help any community out. You just got to ask. And I know Jimmy well enough. If you're going to ask him, he's going to take care of you.
Thank you. Robin, did you have a question?
Well, I had a question. At my temple, we have a security guard at Temple Solel, but I haven't heard of any training. So I wondered if it's something that I would have to reach out to the assistant director, executive director, or
We did.
how does that work?
We did.
What?
I came out and did training for your staff with Peter and a lot of the staff. And the next phase was to start rolling it out to the congregation.
Oh,
It stopped because nobody's having congregations. But yeah, we've been over at Swell.
Yeah.
Actually, we've done the training probably twice for your staff, so they know what to do. And then
over Zoom. Maybe we could do it over Zoom, because who knows when this is going to be where we can, at least we could have that knowledge out on Zoom. And then when we walk back in again, whenever that is, at least we'd have that.
Yeah, like Brad said, it's a very viable platform. It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. I agree.
All right. I'll mention it to Peter, maybe.
Were there any other questions that maybe I missed it in the chat, or if you wanted to unmute your mic and had a question?
Oh, I just have one quick question.
Sure.
Oh, when that older gentleman was walking, he said he was going up the stairs to the 3rd floor. How did he get down outside? I was a little confused when he was telling that story.
Yeah. So originally what happened was he 4th row on the right, you heard he's same spot every time. He ran across the bema. There was actually a door behind the sanctuary, behind the altar, that went upstairs. So he went upstairs on the 3rd floor, secreted for about 15-20 minutes. Felt it was safe, and then what they did is they moved outside the building until they were rescued by law enforcement. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So he he actually did exactly how we train people, sort of. Usually we don't tell them to leave until police get there, but we always train people, look, you run, hide, or fight, not necessarily in that order, but if you're in shelter and if you're barricading, you're constantly preparing. You're either preparing to evacuate like he did, or in the unfortunate incident where you might have to fight back if somebody penetrates that room. He was able, with another individual, to say, okay, it's on the other side of the building now. They can hear the activity. They were able to get outside and get rescued by police. Very thoughtful, methodical process. He thought through the whole thing as he was covered up with a bag of clothes. They were in a room upstairs that was completely covered, and they picked the right room. They hid, they covered with clothes, and then felt it was safe, and that's when they left.
Thank you. Judy, I see you have a question.
Well, just a comment that usually these shootings occur in a no gun zone, gun-free zone. I understand what you say about not carrying your own weapon. I looked into that many years ago, and well, you don't know my size. I'm 4'11". I'm not 100 pounds soaking wet, but an officer said to me many, many years ago that that weapon would be taken away from me so quickly, you know, and so I've never gotten a gun. I shouldn't tell people here, but
Judy, we're gonna work on this. We're gonna make sure they can't get it away from you. Let's go train.
well, I'm very big on the inside, not on the outside, but I am very aware of my environment all the time. If I see a strange car or somebody parked in a certain place, if I'm in a parking lot in the olden days when you could be out and about, I would walk way around or wait for them to leave, or, you know, really, you know, don't walk near bushes because we don't really have bushes here. So I think this is something that's important to know just in ordinary times, not necessarily in an active shooter thing, to be aware of your environment and try to be safe. But that's amazing that you were involved in the Tree of Life. I'm just so impressed. And it could have been so much worse.
It could have been worse, but you're spot on. And I think Jimmy would agree with this. We do situational awareness. We do active threat training for any circumstances, not just for your organization, but to your point, your everyday life. And so that's why that situational awareness, the active threat training, is so important. So every active shooter training we do, we also talk about situational awareness in the point. And the Audrey Glickman, who was in the bottom left, she's the same size as you. She was 4'11" as well. So yes, and she is tough as nails, and she reacted. So I wanted to let you know that as well. Thank you for the comment.
Lou, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm exactly the opposite of Judy, size-wise. And I was military trained, and I understand gun safety. And when all this started a year or so ago, I said, well, okay, I'm going to go buy a handgun now. I can, you know, I can get pretty good with it again. And then I pictured myself, and I said, wait a minute, I'm in no shape to get in a gunfight with somebody. And I don't mean physical shape. I just, you know, I'm not trained in that area. I mean, if somebody came into my house, I don't want to get in a gunfight with him. He'll win. And so I changed my mind and did not buy it, and I'll just pay attention to what's around me.
Well, that takes a lot of courage to admit that and say, hey, a gun might not be the best option for me. And Judy, you know, the gun may not be a best op, but there are technology has advanced in other disciplines, and there are other areas and other things that you can carry. We call them less lethal. That might be an appropriate tool. It might be an appropriate tool. Just something to think about. We can discuss if you want to reach out to me and discuss that offline. But there are other options, so something to think about.
Mel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question. I was going to say, first of all, a gun in hand is better than 10 in the bush or in the pocket, okay? But what I was going to say is, before they sell a gun to somebody, people should be able to take a test or go to a course for 2 or 3 weeks, whatever, before they sell the gun to them. They should also have a mental test. So, you know, but my feeling is that if you're in a synagogue and somebody comes in with a gun, your chances are very little, very slim. So I don't know. Security guard outside means nothing. Okay, thank you.
Well, Mel, your first comments, I'm going to send you the email address for Governor Ducey. But I'm going to let Jimmy and Brad address that one.
Well, a couple things in that. In Arizona, it's a constitutional carry state. As basically all you need is really a heartbeat to buy a firearm in the state. Really pretty easy to buy a gun. So that's kind of is what it is. As far as a guy coming in with a gun, that's that survival mindset that we talk about in training. We talk about a group think mentality. Who's going to be the one, like Joan said, let's take charge and say, let's go. A group can be a very dangerous instrument, but for a greater good, a group can be a very, very, very powerful tool. So it's about a mindset and just kind of thinking through these scenarios.
And just to Mel, to address that, when Jimmy did his training with us, I mean, he really talks about that, and I think that we'll plan something that'll be a training through Zoom just for this group and whoever else would like to join. So I think that'll be pretty eye-opening. Any other questions? I know Lou, your mic's still unmuted. Did you have another follow-up, or you're good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
And,
Yes.
and just one more comment, just to dovetail on Mel's question and Jimmy's answer. With Jimmy's training, and he's going to demonstrate to you, it is very hard to hit a moving target. So that mindset and movement will keep you alive. And I am telling you, I've been doing this for well over 35 years, and you know, studied active shooter, taught active shooters, responded to way too many of them, unfortunately, in my law enforcement career. Movement matters, mindset matters, and all of that comes with the training. So, Rabbi, I would highly encourage you to get Jimmy on here with this group. I think this group would really absorb this training very well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I will. I took Jimmy's. I know Jimmy said he's even added some more stuff to it, so we were going to do it again for our congregation. But yeah, Sherry, you wanted to ask a question.
Just had a question for, I think it was Judy. What did you mean? I typed something back by political correctness. I'm not sure I read your
This is just my opinion, Sherry. I think that a lot of the agencies that used to be very, very active, like the Anti-Defamation League, I think they've taken kind of a back seat. You know, they're collecting a lot of money, but I'm not sure what they're doing with it, really actively, guarding against anti-Semitism. This group, I get their emails and things. I do a lot of Zooms with them, and they're on the internet. They're just everywhere, and there's so many intelligent people, you know, very intellectual Middle Eastern scholars that understand what's going on in the Middle East and in this country. And with words, not with fighting, but with words, they will attack any anti-Semitism that they see. And then it'll be published. It'll, won't be published on Fox, but it'll, it's out there. And I just thought it might be a good resource for them, because they're so on top of different things.
Not to get sidetracked on those comments. I know I see, Laura, you have a question for Jimmy or for Brad?
Yeah, I was thinking about it sounds, you had said something about fight, flight, or freeze, and don't freeze. And then I was thinking about take cover drills that the schools have, but that's like totally different, and where they tell you to get down. But it sounds like in a situation like this, you're better off moving and getting out of the way, or does it depend on where you're at? Because I know, well, I'm a retired teacher, and I know we used to do take cover drills for the kids where they got under their desks and things, but that was like probably a totally different, type of situation rather than active shooters. So I was wondering about the idea of getting down and hiding or something like that, or is that not a good idea in these active shooter situations?
Lori, I get these scenario questions a lot, and this is the word that the two words I guess I have to say, and nobody likes this, it depends. We did a active shooter lockdown drill at a school, and some of the teachers were outside, and when we went into the lockdown, they were trying to get back into the building, and they got locked out. And right 5 yards from them was a gate to get off the property and leave the property and exit the property. So when we went back and looked at it, we said, yeah, don't get into that mindset that, you know, just always hide, always run. If you can evacuate and get off the property, if that's an option, it's always an option. But it's about expanding and keeping that what if and that situational awareness, knowing if something happened right now, what is my best plan of action? So it's a great question. It's a great point. We cover a lot of that in training.
Is there training for individuals, or does it have to be through a group that you do, like through a synagogue or something?
No, we can do it through a Zoom. We can do it individually. I don't care, as long as we get the training out there. That's all that matters. We can do it, you know.
See, and I was thinking that the classrooms also are different in that the teachers were taught to lock the doors and get inside. So theoretically, someone couldn't come in or something.
That's correct.
So that would be a totally different situation also.
You're exactly right. It's exactly, but it's knowing the situation you're in, and if something, what happens, what is your best option?
Depending on the situation. How do we find out about these trainings?
Well, like I'll talk to Rabbi, and we can, well, I think we're going to put one on here. It sounds pretty quick. Maybe the next week. Is that correct?
Well, we'll get some dates to you. Well,
okay. All right.
I'll definitely do that. I'll send you an email afterwards. And then I know Phyllis and Jerry, you had a question, and we'll wrap it up with that one.
Yeah. I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Welcome. It's an honor.
What about the Congress that are wheelchair? What do they do?
So the new training protocols, and it's a great question. The new training protocols, and you might have heard that term run, hide, fight. There's actually 2 videos out there. One was the original run, hide, fight that was done by the city of Houston. The second one, the one that we share now, is the second run, hide, fight video that was produced by the Homeland Security. They even addressed that, right? People that have mobility issues, because we get that, I get that question all the time. Here's the simplest answer. Jimmy already said it once, and I'll say it again. It depends, right? So if you're in a wheelchair, if you can move, movement is better than anything. If we think about it, if we have somebody that's going to be attached, some other congregant, some other member to help get the people that have mobility issues out of there, we look at that also. And again, to Jimmy's point, and I always used to say, I give you my best FBI answer. It depends. The same answer Jimmy gave. But mobility issues are really something that we need to think about. And I've done so many of these drills, and I will tell you, I had one question in one training, and this is a true story, and I'll end with this. The woman said, I'm 75 years old. I have really bad mobility issues. I walk with a cane, and I always do this drill. How far can you move in 70 seconds? I said, ma'am, how far do you think you can move in 70 seconds? She goes, I don't know. I said, well, why don't you start moving? She started moving, and she actually walked out of the sanctuary, because we were in a synagogue. She walked out the front door and across the street in 70 seconds. We had to send somebody out and get her to come back to finish the training. That mindset alone, with her mobility issues, just thinking about it and moving, right? That she was able to, whether it's you're operating the wheelchair or you're pushing it, whatever it is, or somebody's helping you, it's all about that movement. And yes, that's a great question. And that's why I like, 1, the run, hide, fight protocol, because it's the simplest thing to remember. 2, they address mobility issues that were not addressed in the first run, hide, fight video. So the best you can do, hoping that if we all do this together, that somebody's going to help somebody that has mobility issues get out of the way. Hard to hit a moving target, no matter how fast it's moving.
I had a question. I don't know anything about guns, and I was thinking when we were locking the doors, and I'm thinking of it as you're speaking, can a gun shooter lock off somehow house, so locking doors isn't really that great?
It's all about buying time. So if somebody has the ability to to penetrate a lock and take the amount of time and shots and to hit a cylinder just correctly to actually break it would be very difficult to do. But if the door is locked and you can, the average police response is under 2 minutes. If you can slow somebody down for a minute or a minute and a half, 2 minutes, till the police gets there, that's what we're looking to do, is slow things down and buy time. So yes, locking the door is critical. Maybe putting an extra, and this is how we get into training. After we do these little scenarios, we always come out with these ideas. Maybe put a slide bolt on top of the lock for an additional lock, or we always come up. One synagogue we did training in the mobility issue, came up and they answered that the congregants came up with the answer. They said, hey, we're going to assign some people that their job is to actually, they are responsible for getting the folks in the wheelchair and moving them out of the way. So it's all about practice and coming up with these ideas. So, and specifically to you, it's about buying time. So it's slowing people down and buying critical seconds.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up and just say thank you both. Brad, thank you so much for joining us and bringing Jimmy as well. And Jimmy, I will schedule with you. We'll share that information with everyone here. And we'll get something for a proper active shooter training. But again, thank you both for everything that you both do, Brad on a national level and Jimmy on our local state of Arizona. I know I am very appreciative, and I've heard so many other congregations and just Jewish different organizations that have taken up your time and your training and advice. So thank you both. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. If you don't have the schedule, Wednesday is a ventriloquist. So it's a little bit more lighter side of this. And then on Friday, we have just some practical internet tips for everyone to study, learn about. And then on Sunday, there is a lecture, 6:30 in the evening, the archaeological Jerusalem. I'll send that as an email a bit later today or tomorrow if you didn't see anything about it. But again, thank you all again. And thank you, Brad and Jimmy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. So much.
Have a good